Good evening. It is Monday, August 11th. This is the Guilford, Connecticut Board of Education. I'd like to invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get into any of the existing agenda, I would like to ask for a vote to add one agenda item to act on an award of the capital lease. I'd like to make that 9.7. Is there a motion to add this agenda item to tonight's meeting? So, all in favor? Aye. Aye. And I see Dick as well. Thank you. Okay. So the first item on the agenda is action on the minutes of July 11th, our regular meeting from July 11th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? So thank you, Chrissy. Oh, second. Any corrections or comments? I did actually have in one section on page 2, under 9.1, the second sentence, Dr. Freeman has been with the town of Guilford for 11 years. I think what I said in the meeting is going into his 12th year, so that was a little confusing. And then at the end of the second paragraph under 9.1, in talking about the contract, compensation for up to 15 days of unused vacation days at resignation or the termination of the contract, and then provided the superintendent remains employed in the district through June 30th, 2023. Are there any other corrections or comments on the minutes before we vote? All right, hearing none. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Everybody. Okay, thank you. Public forum for topics on the board agenda. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? All right, hearing none. I'm going to turn to Mrs. Waldron for the approval of the expenditures of the month. And we're approving 2 sets of expenditures. We're approving July 2022 to close out the 21-22 year. And then also July expenditures as part of the 22-23 year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So yes, to start with the July or the June totals to end out 21-22 expenditures for the month of July for that fiscal year were $753,997.28. The expenditures and encumbrances through the end of July were 99.99% of the budget. At the time that I spoke to Mrs. Trudeau, that left us with a surplus at the end of the year of $8,987, but there may be some other money coming in and that may increase just slightly, but it is still 99.99% of the budget, which is amazing. I'm just looking at my notes. Salary numbers were high, but overall are under budget. The substitutes were higher than expected. Transportation was higher because an extra week of extended school year was added. That was not budgeted for. It is now in the budget for next year with that extra week. And in terms of transportation, the amount for transportation increased because of the needs and locations, but we had excess costs that helped cover, and we applied that more to tuition, and so it just needed a little bit less. That's why transportation needed some money put into it to help balance that out. To note in the warrants, again, just to highlight that we are over again on legal fees. But we had a very generous donation from some community member that paid off $2,400 of leftover balances in dining services for graduating seniors. So we did have a line item. There was still $786.57 to pay off the negative balance for seniors. By law, we are supposed to pay off all negative balances for all students. So there is still some negative balances that need to be paid off for the rest of the Guilford school system. We only cleared the seniors this year. So that is something that hopefully the community can step forward and pay off some of those outstanding balances to get us into compliance. The total amount of the warrants for that month were $924,018.42.
Wonderful. And we did discuss this in some detail in the operations committee meeting just prior to this meeting, but I certainly will open up to my colleagues if there's further discussion. All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the July 2022 financial reports as they fall within fiscal year 2021-22?
So, second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Everybody, I see Dr. Hirsch. All right, thank you very much. And now July 2022 for the 22-23 year.
Yes. So we have had a number of payments already. The expenditures for the month of July 2022 were $3,654,110.35. This is 8.18% of the budget. We have received $3,800 in pre-K tuition. So the reason why we have already spent that kind of money is that some salaries have already been paid in this budget. For example, full year staff, extra school year teachers and paras, and contributions to the pension and OPEB. Additionally, in terms of our insurance carrier, we did change insurance carriers this year to save some money, and they have a different payment procedure where they require a larger first payment and then equal smaller payments through the rest of the year. I think it's 3 other payments. Additionally, workers' compensation was paid out through the insurance line on the purchased services line. This will be corrected in August, and you will see that balance itself out. Capital and site improvements are already pretty hefty with some very large unexpected payments. There was asbestos abatement at Baldwin Middle School, and the sprinkler system at 595 is higher than expected. There was also an issue with transportation. I think we'll be addressing some of that issue later on. But basically, we have a contract with East River, and there was they brought some extra gas to fill the tanks sooner than expected at a different rate than was contracted. That is going to be adjusted in August, I believe. And we're getting a credit for what was done. So it's all worked itself out. The total amount of the warrants that we are submitting tonight is $1,894,582.79.
Terrific. And likewise, we discussed this report and the warrants in some detail in the operations committee meeting just prior. Any further comments or questions on the financials for July for the 22-23 year? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve these reports? So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's in favor. Okay, terrific. That's everybody. Thank you. And I will note further down on the agenda, in the 21-22 financial reports, you heard some comments about transfers, and we're going to be voting on transfers later in the meeting. Agenda item 6 is communications. Are there any communications that anyone would like to report to the board for the last month? No. All right. Student representatives, they are off, I hope, having fun this summer, so we'll see them in a couple of months. So Dr. Freeman, that takes us to the superintendent.
Thank you very much. I do have a number of items to touch base on tonight. I would first like to direct your attention to the projected enrollment sheet that we have in your packet. This is one of my preferred ways to look at the elementary enrollment. What you see here as you look across is you see our overall enrollment, our enrollment by grade, and then you see the numbers of sections at each grade level at each school, and it allows you to see the class sizes that we're looking at. It also allows you to compare those numbers by looking at average class size per grade level or per school or total. The bottom line is that, again, we continue to maintain really favorable class sizes in our kindergarten through fourth grades. Overall, in the district, in grades pre-K, K through 4 rather, we have an average class size of 19. Now, you will see that there's a low of 14 in some settings, and there is a high of one class of 23 in one of our fourth grades. With 4 neighborhood schools and grade levels and 5 different grade levels, it will be impossible. It will always remain impossible to completely level out all of those sections. If we had one large elementary school of 1,000 students, we could make sure that each grade level was perfectly balanced. But because of the neighborhood school structure, that will just not be the case. We have always mentioned to the board that particularly around kindergarten enrollments, which are the hardest to project, we set a budget and we project enrollments that we begin working on in October. You, the board, approved that in January. And then we always let you know that over the summer, we're going to come back and that we will make adjustments as necessary. I will be suggesting that we make an adjustment to our kindergarten sections as you look at the kindergarten sections. Also of note is that we have been asked to look specifically at grade 2 at Leach Elementary School. You will see that the class sizes at that particular section, while it's a small enrollment, it's a small enrollment that is currently spread across only 2 sections. And you will see that by keeping that class, that grade in 2 sections, we're now hitting 22 students, which is beginning to reach the limit of what the board targets, not for 3rd and 4th grade, but for 1st and 2nd grade. Looking at these numbers, then, it is my recommendation to the board tonight that we add 2 unbudgeted classroom positions at the elementary level. The first would be in that kindergarten area at Jones. You'll see that at Jones, we've got kindergartens that are currently sitting at 20s. I'm particularly concerned because no matter how much we remind people, there are always kindergarten enrollments that happen in the last week of August and the first week of September. So despite the fact that we open in February, there are just enrollments that come in late. I am suggesting that we add a 4th kindergarten section at Jones. Additionally, I am going to suggest that we add a 3rd grade 2 section at Lee. I've gone back and forth about this. It is right up against the limit, but again, I worry about changing enrollments at that specific level. I do want to note, I think it's really important to call out, as that moves from 2nd grade to 3rd grade next year, the board's recommended class sizes now go up to 24. So we will be watching those numbers carefully if they stay flat, and especially if there's any withdrawals. One of the difficult things in doing these is that there may have been families and students who have moved out of Guilford who didn't let us know. And so at times we only learn about those on the first day of school. Once we put that position in place, it will be there for this school year. I just want to be careful and make sure that this is not interpreted as a commitment that those 3 sections, which will now drop from 21s and 22s down to 14s at the very low end of our scale. That is not a commitment that those class sizes of 14 will remain in 3rd and 4th grade years moving forward. That will have to be reevaluated as part of the entirety of class sizes when we do this exercise again next year. But for tonight and for this school year moving forward, I am suggesting here tonight that we add that additional section to kindergarten and that we add that additional section at grade 2. There's really no need for you, the board, to take action on that unless you think that that is not the right decision moving forward. Then I would certainly change that decision moving forward if the board couldn't be supportive of it. So then I want to add this one detail. While those are unbudgeted positions at this time, Mrs. Trudeau and I have met, we have looked at the salary line, we have looked at other areas in the budget that we are already projecting to have some surplus in by the end of the school year. We have received good news in lines, specifically in our medical insurance line, in our workers' compensation line, and in our LAP, another insurance line. I am confident that even though these positions do not appear in the budget that you approved, that we will be able to absorb those costs and that they will not force us to run in deficit through this school year. So I think that they're instructionally good decisions at this time, and I think that they're fiscally responsible decisions to make at this time. Certainly want to hear the board's position, and while it doesn't require a motion or a vote from all of you, want you to be part of the decision moving forward.
And we may have said this, just so we're all clear, we do have in the policy, recommended class sizes by grade. Kindergarten is 15 to 20 students. So what you're bringing to us is 3 sections at Jones of kindergarten that at this moment, at the beginning of August, are 20, 20, and 19.
Correct.
And then our grade 1 and 2 class recommended class sizes are 16 to 22 students. And at LEAP, we have 2 at this moment that look at like they're at 21 and 22. So another 1 or 2 students will start putting us over that reference.
Grade 3 and 4. Grade 3
Grade
and
3
4.
and 4 are 18 to 24.
And again, those are recommended levels. Those are not hard and fast levels. There are in
That's right.
fact class size limits that are in the teacher's contract, and they're all significantly higher than what we target in those guidelines. And that being said, I also want to point out that this decision is easier after having looked at the finances. Again, we're right up against those numbers. If we were not sitting in a strong financial position tonight, it would be much harder to bring that recommendation forward to all of you. I know it's ridiculously early in the year to be talking about being in a good, but we just had the first month's report. But it does appear that not only are the numbers falling up on us to do this, but that financially it is a responsible decision at this time. Otherwise, I just wouldn't be able to bring it forward to all of you.
So this position you created, LEAD, it could be a 1-year position.
Um,
I'm just looking at how the grades, well, no, because the grade below has 3 sections, so that might travel. And the teacher above that grade, there's 2 sections, so it may.
there's always movement, and particularly at the elementary level where we have the single largest number of certifications in that area. There tends to always be some retirement. And so while the position might be only 1 year, right? Every year we make recommendations in the budget that increase or lower that elementary classroom number based on enrollment. But even in the years that we reduce, we rarely end up having to lay somebody off because of that position going away. There's almost always some attrition and movement. It's the largest certification area that we have in the district. And so it insulates individuals. I wouldn't anticipate that this would be somebody who was only with us for a year.
And you would just go into the classrooms, physical classrooms.
Both principals assure me that they have the space to be able to support the additional classroom. Wouldn't be bringing it forward if we hadn't checked that first. It's a really important question. Thank you.
Dr. Goodman, can you talk about, I'm looking at grade 2 in Cox, where we've got 2 classrooms of 20.
Mhm.
And obviously we're at LEAD and we're at 21 and 22, and we're talking about adding a 3rd teacher there. I'm wondering, how do we create equity among, I know we can't ever get it to be even, I get that. But will a Cox grade 2 that's got 2 sections of 20 get an extra helper? Like, is there a way to kind of make it feel like there's not just 2 teachers for 40 kids there, where there will be 3 kids for 43 teachers at LEAD?
So there are often, there are always intangibles that go into these decisions that don't appear on a spreadsheet that only counts student bodies. And so there are other elements that can be and have been taken into consideration around some of those positions. We have increased staffing at Cox this year, again, beyond the budget, with the addition of a half-time special education position that's been added to Cox at that level. And we will certainly work with Mrs. Hammond to make sure that they're getting that sort of support. it's really comes down to the difference between now, it would take 4 more students to enroll in that grade level at Cox before pushing them beyond the board's guideline, and only 1 or 2 students at Leeds before pushing it beyond that guideline. But that's exactly to the point. If we had all those second grades in one building, we could balance it perfectly, rather than saying this group is now at the tipping point, but we've got a buffer of 4 more students here. It just comes down to sort of making those forced choices. I really seriously weighed whether or not to only bring forward the kindergarten position at Jones tonight and not bring forward the position at Leeds. Because of those comparisons, it is some of the intangibles that have led me to make that decision tonight.
So, you know, like the 2 sections at Cox, for example, have an extra para available to them. Should those teachers say this feels overwhelming? Or how does it, like once the school year starts, are there ways to give teachers additional assistance if they're feeling like, okay, this particular group of 20 kids is more challenging and can't quite handle it? Like, how do we help teachers out?
By listening to our principals, right? So the principals are there working with the teachers, making sure that they have the supports that they need to make that a positive and beneficial and effective experience. If we have concerns about that, then there are ways that we can make sure that we add additional support for those teachers beyond creating a whole new class section. Yes.
And just looking at the numbers, it does look like at least at Cox, the class size in first grade have already been kind of consistently higher. I think it was a pretty significant jump that Leeds.
It is always going to be, right, a matter of trying to figure out where we could place things best. And right, we'd all love to see class sizes that were 14 consistently. It's just a matter of trying to place the resources as best we can.
And yeah, and having the class size recommendation policy allows us to know where I think that line is.
Yep.
Where we have to kind of dive in and where we don't.
To Margaret's point, GA said teaching age test numbers are much higher in sophomore, junior, seniors than they are in freshman year, so we're gonna have a lot less students.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I would of course know this. I had a son in a bubble class of 300. He graduated, what, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
We've been watching this march.
Right. You can watch the bubbles move. Yeah.
Watch the lower enrollment march up. Again, we've talked about this several times, right? That we've been lucky because some districts have closed elementary schools.
Well, and
But the enrollment has dropped so significantly, but we have been watching the smaller class sizes move up year over year.
And we are commissioning another demographic study. So we are commissioning another 10-year demographic look ahead.
Good.
We'll be using a different vendor. We're not able to go back and use the vendor we had used for the previous 2, but we will be commissioning that study moving forward this year. It might to some degree help inform decisions next year. But the fact is, right, once you get those classes in that pipeline, you're right, you can watch the bubbles, you can watch the peaks and the troughs move through, and kindergarten is always the wild card.
Yeah.
And more so in these last couple of 3 years.
Right, because we thought last year we would feel the impact of the pandemic,
Yep.
and maybe that we're still feeling a little bit.
So I'm not hearing concerns from the Board of Education. We will move forward with those changes, and right, changes that we make in late in the season like this also become the foundation for next year's budget bill. And so we've talked a few times about unbudgeted positions, the special education positions, these now classroom positions. They in many ways become the foundation for the first draft of the budget next year, because they have to be added to the base budget next year. They're not in this budget this year, which was a 5% increase. These 2 positions we're discussing at this moment are not built into that cost. We will find a way. Thank you.
Any
Greg.
other conversation about that? All right, thank
That also then leads to a hiring and vacancy update. I do want to let the board know that at this point, we do still have some vacant teacher positions, and we just added 2 more to that list. So currently at this moment, we have filled all of our certified teaching positions with the exception of a 1.0 world language position at the elementary level. This is one of the shared Spanish positions. It will service 2 of our schools. Spanish is a shortage area. World language is a shortage area. This is a difficult hire. Principals are still working on filling that position. There are currently 1.5 special education positions that are currently unfilled. One will provide for an additional preschool section at Lakes Elementary School. We've had 3 for the past several years. We will be moving to 4 as we have more students who are being identified with first to 3 needs, and we'll be providing that service. We're still working on filling that position. We anticipate that that'll be filled in the next week approximately. And now we have 2 new classroom positions at the elementary level that we will be hiring for. We'll be hiring for a kindergarten position at Jones. Mrs. Hannah will be leading that. And we will now be hiring for that 2nd grade position at Leet, and Mr. Seal will be leading those searches. Additionally, we still have a vacancy for our director of nursing. Ms. Melliver left us at the end of last school year. We thought that we had a candidate, a finalist, and we lost that finalist to a different position. So we're still working on filling that position. And then I think that you all are also aware that we now have a vacancy for an assistant superintendent. Dr. Crystal has let us know that she will be moving on, and he will be taking a job at higher education. I'm enormously happy for her. I'm really happy for the students who are going to benefit from her. She will be working with educational doctoral students who are completing their EDD, and they could not be in better hands. I'm enormously happy for them and Anine. I'm really, really unhappy that we're losing her here in the district, and that is going to be a significant vacancy. I do want to inform the board tonight, and we'll be asking for you to take action on this a little bit later. I have spoken to Mr. Jody Goler, and he has agreed to serve in an interim position to give us time to run an actual full complete search for Anine's successor. Mr. Goler was first he was principal, and then he was an assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction and assessment in Avon. He moved on from Avon to move into superintendent positions. He served as superintendent in Region 14, and he served as superintendent most recently in Hamden. He has retired. He's actually going to step away, but he has agreed to spend the next few months with us here. He will touch base with Anine, and I have all the confidence in the world in Mr. Goler that he will help us move through. We're beginning to sketch out what a search process will look like. And it is my hope that we will be able to do a complete nationwide search, take candidates through a series of committees, and have a candidate before you by late October or early November. Mr. Goler looks to be available. There are limits on how long superintendents in retirement can actually serve. We think that he will have the ability to stay with us through early December. That may still leave a gap. If we end up with a candidate in early November who needs to give 90 days notice, we will still have a gap. We will figure out how to address that when we get to it. I'm excited that we'll have the opportunity to have Mr. Goler to help us start the school year. And then we're going to miss you enormously.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to let this moment pass without thanking you, Dr. Crystal, for just a tremendous job of kind of leading our district curriculum and instructionally, and your expertise and just the work that you've done over the last several years with our district. It has been invaluable, and we really, really appreciate all that you have done. And the best of luck in this new position. It sounds really quite exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on, next week we move into our annual administrative retreat. The entire leadership team will be spending 3 days next week off site. We're going to actually be going to the Guilford Yacht Club to get out of our buildings, to get out of our media centers. We will be spending 3 full days focused on teaching and learning and moving the district forward. Anine helped design those 3 days, and she will be with us to help deliver those 3 days and move us forward. On day 1, we will be working with Drs. Seiler and Harrison. We will be specifically looking at recommendations that came out of Dr. Seiler's report. And we will be looking at the intersection between some of Dr. Seiler's instructional recommendations and the policies work that this board has done this year, revising instructional policy. We're going to be looking specifically at instruction. We're going to be looking at the ways that we respond to student behavior, particularly when students are engaged in hateful language and using racially or otherwise insensitive or charged language. We're going to be talking about the ways in which we respond to situations like that, including how we communicate to our full community, our broader community. There were times this last school year where parents came to the board and noted specifically that they appreciated the actions of one principal and how he worked with their specific children, but were disappointed in the way that the larger district failed to talk about the importance of what was occurring at a district level. And so we will be working on that as well as our instructional focus areas. We're also going to be looking at hiring. We have told the board that we've got a goal of diversifying our teacher workforce specifically, and we're struggling to realize that goal. So we're going to be working on next Monday, of ways to try to be more proactively and overtly equitable in our practices and not just in our discussions. And so we'll be looking at ways to be more proactive rather than reactive when we talk about equity and social justice in our schools. On day 2, we are particularly excited because we had a group of volunteers this year, community volunteers who worked on helping to draft a portrait of the graduate. We will be rolling that draft out to the leadership team on day 2, and we'll be bringing that to the board and the community, we hope in short order in early September. We'll also be working with Dr. Mike Moody from Insight Education, who has worked with our leadership team before and who is helping to take us through an exercise around initiative mapping. We're looking at all the things that we're doing in the district and making sure that they are aligned and coherent and that we are all using the same vocabulary and all on the same page when it comes to the work, especially in these last 3 years. I think that the leadership team needs to spend some time making sure that we know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and that we're all working hand in glove with each other as we do that work. Dr. Moody and colleagues from Inside Education have been working with the principals over the last few weeks in focus group meetings and with some surveys to generate data that will help us do that work on day 2. And then on day 3, we will be meeting with representatives from GFFE. We'll be looking at the priorities and initiatives that we, the leadership group, will recommend to you to adopt as our district initiatives and priorities moving forward. And we'll also be working with some representatives from Shipman and Goodwin on that day, looking at changes to the Title IX legislation and making sure that we again know best how to follow the statutes and the guidance and support students and conduct student investigations when necessary. And so we'll have some guests from Shipman and Goodwin helping us do that on day 3. We're just really excited about being able to get together and talk about teaching and learning and equity and vision and our graduates and how we are going to continue to do that work. We've got 2 new team members that we need to induct into our leadership team this year, and Mr. Seal and Dr. Mullen. Aneen will be with us. We'll have an opportunity to say goodbye to Aneen and build on the work that she's put in place. But we're really looking forward to those 3 days next week.
Wonderful.
Great.
Sounds great.
Will the interim assistant superintendent be available for that too?
I'm not sure that Mr. Goller is going to be available for that. He is working on it. He may be able to spend a part of one of those days with us, but he's still currently in Hamden, and so we're working on that. I then want to move to a COVID update. It's a terrible segue, but I do want to move to a COVID update. The SDE and the Connecticut Department of Public Health did release guidance last week to school districts about moving forward into this school year. We will be working on a communication to roll out to the community on this guidance. I was able to meet last week with Dr. Nolfo and with Sonia Marino from town, our health director, to go over the guidance. It boils down into 3 basic buckets. And again, there will be a communication going out to the town, to all the parents, but it starts with prevention and vaccination. I know that I spent last year encouraging parents to get their students vaccinated. I want to continue that encouragement. Sonia's been doing a great job. The Guilford Fire Department has been doing a great job standing up clinics. We do know that the best way to insulate our students from becoming infected is through vaccine. Even though we know that even though vaccinated, you can become infected, we know that's the best way to reduce serious results, serious consequences, should you become infected. But we also know it's the best way to limit spread through our community. And so we will continue to message and encourage vaccinations and in fact boosters for students and for adults in our school community. And that is in alignment with what the state is recommending. The second phase or bucket is awareness. And so we will continue to message that if students are symptomatic, if students are showing COVID or even cold and flu symptoms, we want those students to be kept home. We want those students to stay home so that they're not bringing those symptoms into the system. We will continue to provide at-home tests. We continue to have a surplus of at-home tests, and we'll continue to make those available for families who request them so that not only can you monitor symptoms, but you can continue to test your students moving into next year. We want to make sure that we continue to keep the buildings healthy. The longer that we can keep the buildings healthy, the longer we will avoid any more serious mitigation impacts. There is a connected detail here. It's important to know that we will not be providing live streaming support for students who are at home this year. So as I say that if your children have COVID symptoms, or if your children are positive for COVID, that they need to remain home, we are no longer allowed to provide live streaming access to the classroom for students who are home, regardless of whether they are positive or not. So again, I go back to phase number one. The best way to ensure that your children can remain in school is to get them vaccinated, even should they end up being identified as a close contact. If somebody in your home is positive with COVID, if your children are vaccinated, they may continue attending school. If your children are unvaccinated and there's a positive case in your household, then all of the children should be remaining home. And again, there won't be asynchronous, there won't be live streamed opportunities this year. That is a change at the state level. That is not a local change that Guilford is making. I, in fact, would have preferred to be able to continue to provide live streaming service this year, but that is not an opportunity that is available to us. The final bucket is that local school districts have been reminded by the state that at the local level, we still have the ability and the authority to put mitigation strategies in place locally. At this time, we are preparing to open schools normally in September. There are no mask requirements. Individuals are certainly welcomed and in fact encouraged to wear masks if it makes them feel more confident. If they feel better, if the parents feel better, we will not allow students to be singled out or to be teased for wearing a mask. If a mask helps students focus, we want masks in the schools. We will not be mandating masks of anybody next year. We will be engaging in group activities, large group activities. We will not be opening up with any significant mitigating strategies in place as we have now over the last 3 years. But should numbers in Connecticut, should there be a new outbreak, it's important to remind the community that that could change. And that would happen here, that would happen in conversation with you, the Board of Education. But if there's a new variant, and if we see numbers spiking, and if we see students getting seriously ill, there is a likelihood that this can change again. And so I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that the way we open the school year, which I am really excited about, it is really exciting to feel that we are opening a full and complete and normal school year. But I just want people to remember that it may not necessarily remain that way for the full school year. And the thing that every individual can do to make sure that it remains that way as long as possible is to monitor your children for symptoms and for positivity at home, keep them home if they are symptomatic or positive, and to ensure that our students are vaccinated against this. Those are the two things that we can all do to make sure that we don't end up having to add more restrictive mitigating strategies again, as we have over these last 3 years.
Can I ask specifically about the return to normal with regard to parents? Because I know at the end of the school year last year, there was some surprises based on the way, certain events or concerts or this or that were handled versus what was welcome open to families. So when you say a return to like full normal, are we, involving in-person open houses fully and events in elementary buildings?
That's a really good question. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. We're returning to normal, having had learned some things. And so I sort of think that from now moving forward, we're going to try to take advantage of our outdoor spaces more than we have in the past. I think an outdoor activity is always going to be better than an indoor activity for as long as this is part of our life. I think that there are going to be settings that continue to allow distance options. If not, I think that we're going to try to maintain distance options for parent conferences for the parents for whom that's more convenient, and that's better for everybody. But we also know that there's going to be parents who really want to meet in person, and I think that we're going to. Yes, but with some modifications. Some of those pieces we're going to learn about as we continue to come out of this. So I think it might still be a slow release to normal, but it will be a release to normal. I know that's vague.
Yeah.
We're meeting with the principals in the next few days. We'll have more clarity on that. Again, school will run as normal. Yes, I don't know about the full release to the parents, but we're working on getting there.
Are you going to partner with Griffin Health again to offer that free testing during the school year?
We're working on clarifying that this week. So I was hoping to have an answer by tonight. We don't have the answer yet, but I should have the answer in short order.
Great.
Yeah, the weekly testing.
Yes, I know that.
With a positive diagnosis, what's the return to school look like? Is it 5 days from onset, or
It should be 5 days from either the positive test or the onset of symptoms, whichever came first, followed by an additional 5 days of mask, even though that you're back.
and if the child's unvaccinated, does that change anything at all? You had mentioned, are there any restrictions for children who are unvaccinated that might have a positive case at home?
So if you are unvaccinated and there is a positive case at home, you should not be in school. You'd be considered a close contact. A vaccinated close contact can return, and unvaccinated shouldn't. The difficulty here is going to be in monitoring with the prevalence of at-home testing, with the release of strict contact tracing. Those become expectations that we set for the parents. We don't have tools or vehicles to enforce those expectations in many of those cases. We're going to be counting on each other and relying on each other, but we're not going to be able to enforce it the way we did when we were able to conduct strict and thorough contact tracing.
And with no remote learning, what do resources look like for our students who are mandated to be out of school for 5 days potentially?
It goes back to what it looked like pre-pandemic when your child had the flu and was out. If they're well enough, you can ask the teacher, and the teacher may be able to provide some asynchronous activities that are on the Google Classroom page, or might be able to send some work home with a classmate. But that now becomes individual. It comes down to what activity is happening in the classroom, whether it translates easily to something that can go home, how well your child is feeling at home, and particularly how many of those cases are impacting an individual classroom. A teacher who has one child out for 5 days might be able to support at home more than a teacher who has 6 or 8 out. So it's going to continue to be a numbers game.
Will we be continuing to monitor? So we have, I know, a tracker, a daily tracker on the website. Is that going to be something that continues, or?
We plan on continuing that at least through opening. I have less confidence in the accuracy of those numbers, again, because we are releasing much of this to individual parental control and reporting. And so we will continue it, but I would not point to it with the confidence that I have in the past. Still, if we can provide it and it helps parents make some decisions, that's helpful. But again, the decisions that parents get to make based on it are more restricted than they were in the past. There's no longer an opportunity to choose full at-home learning this year, and we'll no longer be providing short-term live streamed instruction. So it's there, it'll be there as informational. If at some point we begin to get advice either from the state or from our local authorities that the data is so unreliable as to be unhelpful, then we will stop providing it at that time.
I know this is really specific, I promise. I know that when students miss a certain number of days, you get that letter that comes home that they have to make up.
Yes.
How would, if it's for COVID reasons, let's say they have to stay home for 10 days for whatever reason, how's that taken into account when it comes to like that letter?
So there's two ways that we look at that. So when a student hits 10% of the school days missed or 18 days of absence over the course of the year, they now by definition at the state's level are identified as chronically absent. Right now, that requires us to report those numbers to the state. Those numbers are reported to the state in aggregate. They're numbers, they're not names, they're not individuals. What that would normally do for us in the past is it would trigger us to reach out to that family to make sure that we were offering all the support that we could. I think this year, those numbers are going to continue to be inflated. That's not necessarily going to be an issue of truancy. It's not necessarily going to be an issue of school avoidance. That in the past, those are the things that we're looking for when we see those chronic absence numbers. It may mean that you get a phone call from a school counselor noting that, hey, you just hit day 18. And it might need you to remind us to say, yeah, but 3 of those were COVID, right? And that's all it will take. We hope not to send letters out unnecessarily, but the fact is we might miss, and it would just be a matter of communicating. It will not impact. I want to be careful how I say this. In grades K through 8, it will not have any impact in the student's ability to complete the year, succeed, and move forward to the next grade level. At the high school, where class attendance is counted differently, we'll need to continue to look at that and monitor that. We will not allow it to hold any student up.
Right, because what I'm thinking of, right, is like a classic example. If a kid wakes up and they've got, maybe it's allergies, maybe it's not, nobody knows, but you're keeping your child home because that's the protocol.
Yep.
Just how, because I think personally, I know that happens to us a lot last year.
Yep.
That's why it's nice to know if the school can work with us on that. That would be great.
Absolutely. And some of it, I need to ask, that's, some of it's not going to feel great. The school nurse is going to call and we just need to ask you to remember that we're working as quickly as we can. Take a breath and we will work with you. But you might get the letter, shouldn't have gone out, but it did. You might get a phone call. We are also encouraging, especially students who have chronic conditions, to talk to your pediatricians, because a student who has chronic nasal drip or congestion or allergies, if a doctor can identify that as chronic, then that gives us a little more flexibility so that your pediatrician, your school nurse, and you, the parent, are working collaboratively to make sure that the student is not coming to school sick, but not missing school unnecessarily. And we're still trying to figure out how to thread that needle successfully.
Do you think that information will also go out in this COVID communication? Great.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions on this topic? All right.
Uh,
Last on yours?
Well, last one, but then I was going to try to sneak one in.
Oh,
Yeah. I also want to bring to the board's attention that we have at this point approved a high school music trip, and we're particularly excited about it because, again, we're talking about coming back. So I do want you to know that we have received a request from the high school music department for a trip to Washington, D.C. to fall on the dates of April 11th through 14th. This is spring break, so these are students traveling on their time, not missing class time. We anticipate approximately 150 students who will enroll in this activity. There is a parent cost. The parent cost will be approximately $1,250 per student or less, depending on fundraising efforts that happen early on. I have approved this trip, but it is required that I bring it to the board's attention. I see that Mr. Jones is in the audience, and I know that he'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any. We're just excited to be able to bring an opportunity like this back to the high school students at this time.
If I recall, this is a trip that was canceled very last minute prior to COVID, right? As COVID just-
I don't know if it was a specific.
It was,
do you mind? Oh, whoever.
it was a
Thank you.
trip
Thank
to
you.
California that was canceled. Yes.
It has been opportunities for our large performing groups to travel and perform have been an essential component of our program historically. It's part of being part of Guilford Music. It's part of being a musician to travel and to perform. So yeah, we're excited to be able to provide it. Is there anything that either of you would like to add to my admittedly rushed explanation?
You're not gonna sell
it
something.
better than I do.
If it's sold, I won't. Sure.
No, I'm just curious, like, do you have an idea of what's planned for kids or
You're taking advantage of any of the monuments, and a lot of those things are free, which was great about DC. The music teacher is very excited that there's a Kennedy Center concert with Firebird being played. So we're gonna be playing some of that in symphony orchestra and in wind ensemble, and then we'll be able to see that concert. There's a clinic at university there with guest conductors and clinicians, and
Is that George Mason?
George Mason, thank you, yeah.
Mhm.
Can I just ask?
A
so
cruise.
I know there's a bunch of different musical groups within the high school. Can you
Yes.
Tell us which ones this trip is for.
Band, chorus, and orchestra, all three. And I'm gonna have to, I actually texted Mark and Rachel that question, but Mark's out of country, Rachel's out of state. And just kind of relying on precedent as to which ensembles. Is it select ensembles? Is it to the whole music department? I don't have that answer. But looking at the numbers, if we're projecting 150 students, I do believe that that's going to be open to pretty much everyone in the whole department.
Goodness, thank you.
Sure.
Will there be opportunities for the kids to fundraise around this?
Yeah, we're still going to do the fruit fundraiser that we did last year, the mattress sale. The boosters is also happy to help support any students who are looking for some extra financial aid, and all of that will be communicated very clearly. Like the finances will not be a hurdle or a barrier for students that come on the trip.
An exciting
Yes.
opportunity.
It's
Thank you.
I know.
Yeah.
Kids that, like they've been waiting their whole high school career for this, so that's great, yeah. Very great. Good. Thank you.
Thank you all.
very much.
Thank you.
And if I may, before I wrap up, I just do have one last item. I was not present at your last meeting, when the board, voted to extend my contract by another year, and I just want to, share my thanks and again, tell you how much I appreciate your continued support, your continued confidence, and how much I'm looking forward to this year and to after that to continue. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that will conclude my report. It was long, I apologize.
Yep, no, lots to do. All right. Board agenda, the first thing on the board agenda is to act on personnel items. And at this time of year, it is not unusual for us to be ratifying the appointment of a number of new teachers. So I am going to ask for a motion to ratify the appointment of the following teachers. Kelly Oliver for Cox Elementary School, grade 3 teacher. Lisa Butler for Adams Middle School, special education teacher. Rick Paolini Jr., Guilford High School, special education teacher. Christy Stoddard, Baldwin Middle School, special education teacher. Caitlin Pizzera, Lakes Elementary School, special education teacher. Maddie Colavolti, Cox and Lakes Elementary Schools, Spanish teacher. Brian Searles, Jones Elementary School, special education teacher. Maurice Dashke, I hope I pronounced that somewhat correctly, Guilford High School Technology and Engineering teacher. Sabrina Kosh, Guilford High School MBDA competencies teacher, that is the master's
Mastery-based diploma.
Isabella Reyna, Adams Middle School art teacher. And Caroline Beatty, Lakes and Elementary School special education teacher. So is there a motion to ratify the appointment of these 11 teachers?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That's everyone, wonderful. We are also being asked to ratify the resignations of the following teachers. Lauren Dumar, speech and language pathologist, Baldwin Middle School, 4 years of service in Guilford. And Bernard Brennan Jr., mathematics teacher, Adams Middle School, 37 years of service in Guilford. Is there a motion to ratify the resignation of these two teachers?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, our great thanks for their service, particularly 37 years of service. Oh my gosh, is that right? That's awesome. That's totally awesome. Well, please share our thanks to both of them. And then We're being asked to ratify the resignation of the following teacher due to an increase in the FTE assignment. So this is a part-time teacher. The position was increased. This person was unable to accept that, the kind of new status of the position. So Joanne Goller, Baldwin Middle School, chorus and music teacher, 16 years of service. So can we ratify the resignation of Joanne Goller, please?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's everybody. Thank you. And thank you to her, certainly, for her
Absolutely,
service
yes.
as well.
Yep.
All right. We are next going to be asked to act on the appointment of the interim assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction. I think I'm turning back to you for a second.
It is, and I think I covered it. I should have waited until this agenda item, but we are fortunate to have Mr. Jody Goller, who is available and excited to join us in an interim position. Want to make it clear, interim position did not include a full search. It was, I reached out to CAPS, I spoke to some friends. Mr. Goller, I know, is going to do a good job moving us forward and will fill that position for us for 3 or 4 or 5 months until we can select and then start a full-time assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction and assessment.
And as you noted, he has been superintendent in 2 districts before this. And for my math, that covers 11 to 12 years or so. So this is an individual, as you say, with a lot of experience.
A lot of experience and recognized as one of the stronger superintendents for teaching and learning in the state of Connecticut.
Perfect.
And he's headed into retirement.
He is fully retired. He has retired from Hamden. He has done some interim work for them following his own retirements. But their new superintendent begins and he will be available and is looking forward to spending some time with us.
And we all have his resume and all the kind of things. Pointing her. All right, so we are being asked to act on the appointment of Jody Goller as interim assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. Is there a motion?
So
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's everybody. Thank you. All right. 9.3, we are being asked to act on budget transfers for the 2021-22 school year. This is a pretty much probably a yearly event, which allows us to make sure that each of our budget lines come in at or below the expectation. So we are being asked tonight to approve the following budget transfers to cover the over expenditures for the 2021-22 fiscal year. We're being asked to transfer to employee benefits, $163,000, to purchase services, $426,500, to capital, $23,200, and to transportation, $355,600. That totals $968,300. The transfers will come from salaries in $130,000, tuition $720,000, and supplies and materials $118,300. Is there a motion to approve these budget transfers?
So moved.
Mr. Petra,
Second.
Mrs. Peck, all those in favor? Aye. That's everybody. All right, thank you very much. And again, a thank you to Mrs. Trudeau and her staff for their very careful budgeting every year. Okay, 9.4, we're being asked to act on awarding of special education transportation bids. We have a bus company, Specialty Transportation, that we work with regularly. They do all of our regular bus runs. But we do put out for bid a number of our special transportation bus runs which allows us to then look for the lowest bid and really then provide service that also is financially and fiscally careful. So we have in front of us 11 bids. We have 5 vendors that submitted bids for the runs that were put out for bid. We have 4 companies, Curtin, Coordinated Transportation Solutions, SPM, and Specialty Transportation, who does take some of them, who have put in the lowest bid for a variety of these bus runs. I will note that as part of our contract for specialties, our specialty bus service, they are allowed to ask for and provide these runs if they can meet the lowest bid. We are expecting to hear from them if that is the case, but to date have not heard. I'm looking at Mrs. Trudeau and she is nodding. All right. So we are being asked tonight to approve the awarding of the special education transportation runs noted to the lowest bidder, which again includes the 4 companies I mentioned. And if specialty asks to take any of the runs to match that low bid, they could take them as well. Have I stated that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Is there a motion then to approve these 4 companies for the lowest bid, acknowledging that specialty per our contract could take them if they meet that bid? Thank you. So moved. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's everyone. Thank you very much. 9.5 is to receive a textbook recommendation, AP United States History.
Mrs. Chat is here to share that text with you tonight. Thank you again, Julia.
Of course. Here is a review copy of the text. So the AP Advanced Placement United States History teachers did a full review of the former text that they were using called American Pageant because that particular textbook company, or the company that publishes that particular textbook, I should say, was requiring them to do some updated ordering for it. And so since they had to update the textbook order anyway, they did a full review of other textbooks as well. And they chose this one for a number of reasons. First of all, the social studies standards have shifted to the C3 framework in recent years. They felt that this textbook was more fully aligned to those standards that the teachers are expected to address. And in addition, the College Board goes through a revision of each course every so many years, and that it would include AP US History as well. In addition, the College Board has launched a number of online resources that they didn't formally have. And so the teachers have begun to use those resources in addition to textbooks to make sure that the materials that they are using are most closely aligned to the requirements for College Board, requirements for advanced placement, and at the same time that we're meeting the requirements for the United States history as a graduation requirement as well. So they are trying to balance both of those things at the same time, and they felt that this textbook was a better choice to address those.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions?
Does the AP, the people who run the AP, I don't know what the title is, do they make recommendations as to certain textbooks ever?
I do know that when you do the trainings to teach the courses, they often have multiple textbook representatives there. because everyone is competing for your money. And so they will offer review copies at the trainings so that you can sort of look and see what the different textbook companies have to offer. And I also know that it depends on the school and how they have their advanced courses set up. If it is aligned to a dual credit course at a university, then you might have to use a particular book that the university wants you to use. But in this case, with Advanced Placement US History, that course is not aligned to any of the dual credit university courses. And so we have a little bit more latitude as to which it has to be a college level text. But other than that, we have the freedom and ability to review different texts and pick the one that we think is going to be the best.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And so this, the title of the book, Experience History Interpreting America's Past, AP edition. The course for which use is projected is the Advanced Placement United States History, grade 11, though I'm sure there's a little bit of flexibility in there, right? Depending on who takes it, or is it always grade 11 for this?
It's pretty uniformly grade 11, yes,
Sure.
unless for some reason, we have a transfer student who hadn't taken US history yet, but for the most part, it's grade 11.
Terrific. And this tonight is a received item. We will then be asked to vote on it next month unless there's a reason that we need it sooner. No.
No, the vote next month will be fine, and a copy of the text will be available at Baker House on the Green for anybody who would like to review the text.
Okay, I know sometimes there's an urgency to get it into circulation, right?
Yeah, I think that, if we act at your next meeting, the students may not have it delivered for the first few days of classes, but the teachers will have it in a timely enough manner to be able to build on it through the rest of the school year.
And I think although it's a required text, it's not the only resource that the teachers are using. So they could, as I said, access that College Board online database to get things rolling. And then we will order the textbooks and expedite that as quickly as we can.
So again, this is something that will be available in Latham House for the next month if anyone is interested.
Right.
So thank you so much.
All
Any
right.
other questions that anyone? No. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. First, I'm gonna have to put the book down. Because we're on to the recommendations from the policy committee.
Great. Okay, so the first policy that we reviewed last time.
Right.
Is number 3724. It's dining services meal charging. So this policy is directly from state statutes. It's a change that allows a student to charge a single meal. I read through that last time. You guys have had this for a little bit. Any other questions or discussion on 3724?
No, as you noted, these, I think, all that we'll see, be asked to act on tonight were brought to the board last month. Yeah. All right. So is there a motion to approve policy 3724 dining services meal charging as amended and brought forth by the policy committee? Thank you. Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, that is unanimous.
Great. And then if you recall, in our last meeting, we handled 6336 together. We've got two line items for 6336 regarding curricular exemptions. So what I would suggest coming out of the policy committee is that specifically on dissection of animals, that we remove number 6336 is specific. We've got one current one that is specifically on the dissection of animals. We would like to delete that from the policy handbook.
Okay.
And in its place, we would like to add a new 6336 that identifies all 4 curricular exemptions that would wind up being available. So parents can elect to exempt their students from dissection of animals, from family life education, from HIV/AIDS education, or from sexual abuse and assault awareness and prevention programs. Those are the only 4 mandatory curricular exemptions that we are allowing. And since dissection of animals will now fall into the new 6336, Why don't we first? I don't know if I should suggest, or if you need to, Katie, request a deletion of dissection of animals, 6336 from the policy. handbook?
I don't have a problem going in that order, if no one else does, so, then I'm asking for a motion. To delete the dissection of animals removal. The existing policy 6336, which is, as you stated, it's a policy about. A student being able to be exempted from that. So the policy committee is asking for the removal of the current 6336 dissection of animals removal policy. Or sorry, the section of animals policy.
It is worth noting, it's important to note that the exemption from participation in dissection in this case and the other three exemptions that we will address in the replacement policy are called out by statute. So
Yes.
the statute requires that these exemptions be provided to students. It's important to note that.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion then to remove the current 6336 dissection of animals policy? Second, all right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, that's a unanimous support for that.
And Dr. Belstracy, if I may, before you vote to approve the new 6336,
Yeah.
I would, if I may, I would like to offer a friendly amendment that you approve the first 2 pages, which is actually the policy itself, but that we not include the form. The form was there as an informational item. We want to be clear. We're working hard to make sure that our policy book is full of policies and regulations and not the forms that then enable those policies and regulations. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're asking you to approve the first 2 of 3 pages, but not page 3 of 3 in that item that you have in your packet.
And to just kind of take that one step further, the reason for that, the reason we've been doing that for some time, is that the forms are readily available by the Public Schools Administration for anyone who needs them. But it prevents us from having to re-review and re-vote on policies when we need to change a line in a form.
Exactly.
And so allows greater flexibility and makes sure that the most current form is always available to a parent or student who needs.
Correct.
Anything else to add on this one?
Nope, so 6336, we covered in our last meeting. I'll just give a couple of highlights. So I just listed the 4 mandatory curricular exemptions that are available. And except for those specific exemptions, the board does not require teachers to exempt students from any other aspect of the curriculum. And students will be required to complete an alternate assignment as decided by that specific teacher. So those are, I think, the things that are noteworthy about 6336. So I think we should maybe ask for a motion on just 336 and then do a second motion to not include the form. Is that how we need to handle that?
No, I would think if you just take a motion to approve the policy as presented on the first 2 pages, and that we're approving the policy only, but I don't see a need for the board to approve the amended form, the attached form. That'll be clear enough.
Okay. So is there a motion then to approve 6336, which will now be called curricular exemptions, as presented by the policy committee, including just the first 2 pages?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That's everybody. Okay, great.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, from the policy committee, we covered the bylaws in meeting over the summer, which is number 9,000. What the policy committee would like to ask of the full committee is that in our next policy committee meeting, we maybe ask everyone available to join us for that particular policy committee meeting so that we can discuss the bylaws, the recommended changes. That is, of course, it's open to the public, so anybody in the public can attend that meeting. There are a number of things to cover. It's mostly kind of cleanup work on old language, but there are some recommendations about how we conduct the meeting, how we conduct public comment that we felt as a committee we wanted to get the larger board's opinion on before we came forward with recommendations for this specific meeting. Okay.
So that 9,000 series is there as an act on tonight. I'm hearing a recommendation that we table
we
that
hold
until
on.
we have
Put
one
on
additional
hold.
policy. I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so, the policy committee is asking us to hold on any kind of action, on 9.6.4 on our agenda, and that will be addressed at the
What is the
meeting.
next one?
No, I think that's.
Okay, excellent. All right, and then we're up to 9.7, which is the, added agenda item. That, did I keep going? Oh, okay, Linda, wonderful. We are being asked, to act on an award of the capital lease, and I'm, gonna ask Mrs. Trudeau, to come talk to us a few minutes, about what we're being asked to vote on tonight.
Due to some extenuating circumstances, we were unable to continue with the lease that the board approved last month. So we were able to initiate another lease with Cogent Bank. And their lease rate actually is a little bit lower than what we previously had. So their lease is 2.99% for a 5-year lease for the $575,000. So we just need the board's approval to award to Cogent Bank. So that we have the board's approval for this. Capital lease.
Okay, wonderful. So, we did discuss this also a little bit in the operations committee meeting just prior to this. It's my understanding that the contract with JP Morgan has been canceled. Which was the vote, one of the two votes we made at our board meeting last month. And that we're being asked to approve, the award of the capital lease to Cogent Leasing and Financing Incorporated. This is a 5-year lease in the amount of $575,000. And in fact, we are getting, a better rate at 2.99% with Cogent Leasing and Financing.
That's
All right.
correct.
Excellent. I know, again, we discussed this operation committee meeting, but I don't know if anyone has any additional questions.
These lease payments will be within the amount that was budgeted for this lease for this. 22-23 school year.
Okay. Terrific. All right, so then I am going to ask for a motion to approve the award of the capital lease to Cogent Leasing and Financing Incorporated. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Dr. Hirsch. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, we now up to reports of committees. The policy committee, Mrs. Peck, I don't know if you have anything additional to add.
Nope, just looking forward to a big group at the next meeting.
All right. Operations committee, Mr. Delmentor, anything to add?
So we received an amazing report from our facilities, and this is the time of year where our facilities team is in a high gear, get everything done. I'm happy to report that things seem to be moving along very well. I think the only other thing worth pointing out is amazing job, as always, Linda, in closing out the budget. I know how much effort goes into that. So with these transfers, that kind of puts the budget to bed. And well done on another budget.
Excellent, thank you. Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, Dr. Hirsch, I don't know if you have anything to add for us tonight?
Not till we meet in the fall.
Not until we meet in the fall. Okay, thank you very much. Any reports from liaisons to town committees?
And acquisition did not meet for the month.
Okay.
Report next month.
All right, and I know the Learn Board of Directors is quiet during the summer. 11, public comment or questions. Is there anyone who would like to address the board this evening? All right, no, you've gotten a wave, hello, but no comment. All right. That brings us to the end of our meeting. Thank you for those of us who joined us in the room. Thank you to the community viewing via live stream for GCTV. I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.